Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin in a few minutes. Please take your seats. Thank you very much indeed. Please take your seats.
Men qo'y chitkiga roqdi bar.
Erti ori.
Gel.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin in 1 minute. Please take your seats right now. We will begin in 1 minute. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your presence here. I am delighted to announce the opening of the OGP Summits here in Georgia. You've come from all around the world. I think you can give yourselves a big round of applause to start this fantastic event. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Alex Taylor. I will be your moderator this morning. It was my pleasure to host the OGP Summit in Paris 2 years ago. I recognize quite a few faces, quite a few new faces too. Thank you very much indeed for being here. The host country of the summit, ladies and gentlemen, as you probably know, is celebrating the 100th anniversary of the independence of the First Republic of Georgia. The video and the musical performance, which you are about to see, is dedicated to this event. So a big round of applause to our musicians who will open the event. Thank you.
Georgia was incorporated into the Russian Empire by armed force in 1801. Following the breakup of the Russian Empire, Georgia restored its independence in 1918.
First Democratic Republic of Georgia.
May 26, Tbilisi, Georgia.
Fellow citizens, in this very chamber one country has died, the Transcaucasian Democratic Federated Republic. And now in the same chamber the foundations are being laid for a new country, Democratic Georgia.
Georgia's Declaration of Independence. With this text, the founders of this new Georgia stated the principles on which their country would be established.
Independent Georgia will take the political form of Democratic Republic. Within its borders, the Democratic Republic of Georgia guarantees equally the civil and political rights of every citizen, irrespective of ethnicity, religious faith, social condition or sex. February 1919.
Parliamentary elections are held in Georgia. The citizens of the country give free expression to their own political will. The Social Democratic Party wins the majority of the votes and goes on to form a government. In the country's supreme legislative body, elected deputies from 3 other parties form an opposition faction. 5 women, as well as representatives from almost every ethnic minority living in Georgia, enter the country's Constituent Assembly. The Georgian Democratic Republic, which was in existence for a mere 3 years, was the first social democratic country in Europe. During the period of the First Republic existence, important new policies were implemented. The boundaries of the state were established. The government was divided into legislative, executive and judicial branches. Equality before the law was enshrined into legislation. The judiciary was reformed, a regular army was created, and the People's Guard was formed. Institutions of local government were created through democratic elections, as were trade unions. Political pluralism was guaranteed through creation of multi-party system. Protections were introduced to ensure freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and the free operation of religious, cultural, and educational institutions. Universal suffrage was introduced, along with the many other civil rights. In February 1921, Georgia adopted a constitution, a document which still has a place of honor in constitutional history, thanks to its spirit of freedom and inherently democratic outlook. This document reveals a lot about life in Georgian state at the time, as well as concerns and attitudes of people during this period. The Constitution affirms the equality of all citizens before the law and outlaws discrimination based on social classes. It affirms the equality of both sexes and guarantees their political, civil, economic, and domestic rights. In 3 years of existence, more than 20 foreign states, including Russia, formally recognized Georgian independence. Despite this recognition, in February 1921, Soviet Russia attacked and occupied Georgia.
News footage of the restoration of Georgian independence.
In 1991, Georgia regained its independence. Independent Georgia is the legal and political heir of the First Republic, and even today the state is founded on the same values that were adopted 100 years ago by our forebears in the Declaration of Independence and the country's constitution. Georgia regained its independence in 1991, and despite the Russian occupation of its territories, the country still moves forward on its way to successful development. Nowadays, Georgia is a leading country in the region in democracy and open governance.
was very important to me.
Community members got concerned when they saw yellow machines moving into their communities.
Anteriormente el gobierno no le ponía atención a los pueblos indígenas.
Ahora descuida porque nunca conoce nadie.
Estábamos abandonados totalmente.
Маш их өөрчлөлт. Өгнөө яг тэгвэл төслийн ирчээс өмнө аюул хүн нөхцөлд амьдарч байсан, тогтохгүй орчинд амьдарч байсан хууржилж чадсан. Ер нь бол одоо манай тогтолцоо бол
El asunto es que no nos han dejado decidir hasta ahora.
El Consejo de Desarrollo es un espacio en donde la ciudadanía puede articular acciones con el gobierno municipal.
Decide Madrid es la plataforma que hemos puesto en marcha, una plataforma digital, para que la gente pueda tomar el control.
The community is going to be part of the negotiation. That's completely different.
Antero lucha pero no hay por la oportunidad. Cuando hay la oportunidad, ya ve.
Yo tengo mucha fe en este mecanismo de consulta. Nosotros tenemos que tener las mismas condiciones que tiene cualquier ciudadano.
No estamos aquí para mandar. La democracia es que mandemos todo.
Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. That was the introductory music. A huge round of applause for our musicians. I think they opened the whole event in a fantastic way. I'm sure you appreciated it. It's now time to hand over to the OGP CEO, Mr. Sanjay Pradhan. Please give him a big welcome. Thank you. Sanjay.
Excellencies, OGP leaders, a very warm welcome to our 5th Global OGP Summit. Our huge gratitude to the government and civil society of Georgia for hosting us. Since our last summit in 2016, our world has gotten even tougher and our imperative to step up more pressing. Democracy, human rights, and civic space are under attack as never before, as documented by Freedom House and Civicus. Trust in government is at an all-time low, measured by the Edelman Barometer. A toxic wave of xenophobia, nationalist populism, and authoritarianism is sweeping the world. We face similar challenges in OGP, even after Hungary, Tanzania, and Turkey have exited, and Azerbaijan has been made inactive. Despite these, OGP represents a hopeful path forward because across several OGP countries, committed reformers are opening government in areas where they're closing in other countries. In Armenia and South Korea, citizen movements have removed leaders mired in corruption. We have several courageous reformers risking their safety to push for openness, such as Hungary's Sándor Lederer, right here in this room, or Niger's Ali Idrissa in prison rather than in this room. Others here have skillfully navigated political transitions as in Liberia and the Philippines. So at this summit, when our partnership nears 100 national and local governments and thousands of civil society organizations, we have an opportunity and imperative to show an alternative, a brighter, more hopeful path forward, a path that puts citizens first at the very heart of government, where citizens are empowered to impact policies that affect their lives. So what should we do differently to achieve this vision? To begin with, when 100 countries are closing civic space, let our partnership of 100 instead enhance civic space. For this, let us inspire one another by sharing evidence on how citizens' ability to freely speak, associate, and assemble enables them to shape better policies, generating dividends for governments and citizens alike. For instance, in Mongolia, village audits saved 10% of the budget. Participatory budgeting in Brazil improved health outcomes. To achieve such outcomes, let us make OGP commitments that expand civic space, as Canada and Serbia are doing. And let us tackle new weapons in the authoritarian playbook. For instance, by regulating online political ads to curb misinformation, by protecting journalists and human rights defenders, by expanding media freedoms and digital rights, as in Mongolia. With this enabling environment, our central focus must be to empower citizens to shape and oversee policies and services that affect their lives. For this, in OGP, we will need to make 3 key shifts to rebalance our dominant focus on government transparency. First, let us make a big push on improving services like health, education, and water that touch citizens' lives, including at the local level. Second, let us systematically mobilize direct citizen participation and feedback, smartly leveraging technology. And third, let us ensure that government responds to close the feedback loop and win trust back. In Kaduna, Nigeria, when an audit unmasked ghost hospitals, the government partnered with citizens to be its eyes and ears. Using a mobile app, citizens can upload photos and feedback on projects, which goes directly to the governor's office and the state legislature, which has then catalyzed a record completion of 500 schools and 200 hospitals, improving maternal health and safety. In Paris and Madrid, governments have set aside 100 million euros so citizens can fund projects that respond to their needs. The Paris Citizen Engagement Platform is being adopted in 96 other cities. By empowering all using mechanisms like this, we can show an inclusive alternative to populism, which not only empowers aggrieved majorities, but also excluded minorities. For this, let us scale up inspirational OGP examples, such as empowering indigenous communities in Costa Rica, migrants in Germany, the homeless in the city of Austin, USA. And with our next co-chairs, Canada and Nathaniel Heller, let us scale up commitments that empower women, such as those which are combating gender-based violence in Sierra Leone and Colombia. Now, empowering citizens also means enabling them to monitor and curb corruption, because only then can they ensure that the government serves them rather than itself. And here, we have a transformational opportunity to forge new global norms. 46 OGP governments are disclosing contracts to citizens. These need to be credibly implemented. Ukraine's Dozoro is noteworthy because it empowers citizens to report violations in contract implementation. In 2 years, 14,000 reported violations, half resolved, $1 billion in savings, 82% of entrepreneurs reporting reduced corruption. Another 16 OGP countries are disclosing company ownership so citizens can follow the money. At the same time, only Chile and Ireland are empowering citizens to monitor lobbyists to curb influence peddling. You know, advancing such global norms will encounter stiff political resistance. So we must strengthen our coalitions to push forward. At the global level, we are fortunate to have new world leaders taking the baton of open government forward. In the OGP Steering Committee, new governments stepping up from Canada, Argentina, South Korea, Nigeria, with new civil society leadership from Civicus's Danny Sikandaraja and Transparency International's Delia Rubio. But given the growing momentum of authoritarian leaders, we need OGP leaders to forge stronger, more cohesive coalitions to push back. At a time that leaders like Hungary's Viktor Orban proudly proclaim the end of liberal democracy, we need more OGP heads of states, ministers, and mayors to speak out in democracy's defense, prevent backsliding in peer countries, and challenge head-on strongmen's claims that unraveling democracy is the only way to deliver results. We similarly need stronger coalitions at the country level as integral to achieving their goals. We similarly need to make our civil society community more inclusive to those advocating for services like health and education. And we need to mobilize citizens and citizen movements because whatever their goals, whether gender equality or health, empowering citizens with voice and information will be vital to achieving them. And given attacks on check and balance institutions, we need to forge stronger coalitions with the media, with parliamentarians, with judiciary, and the private sector. You know, all these stakeholders are represented right here in this hall. But we must candidly ask, in this large hall, are we simply 2,000 disconnected, lonely warriors fighting individual battles? And how can we forge a joined-up force that multiplies collective strength and supports one another against formidable headwinds? So let us forge a powerful collective force that reinvigorates democracy and pushes back against closing government, that empowers people to shape and oversee government, to deliver on the precious promise, a government for the people, by the people, of the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Sanjay, for those opening words which stress the importance of our summit within the current political context. I'm delighted now to welcome onto the stage, he's our host here today, the Prime Minister of Georgia, His Excellency Mamuka Bakhtadze. Please welcome him. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome the distinguished guests. It's a great honor to me to be here today with you, together with you, with the representatives of the countries for whom the modern and open governance is the fundamental principle and fundamental precondition. Today we have more than 70 countries, representatives from the international organizations, academia, diplomatic corps, journalists. Dear guests, on behalf of the government of Georgia, I would like to thank you for participating in the summit of the OGP. the major goal of the OGP, it is, of course, first of all, the impartiality of the government, as well as the increase of the trust and establishing new technologies in the governance. The multiple approach, the principle of the participation, that is the modern the tool for the governance. And in the center, we have the citizen. Dear friends, today Georgia celebrated its very big victory, 100 years of its independence. I would like to say openly that of course, the values of the OGP were well reflected in the constitution of the First Georgian Republic of 1918. The aim of our government is just to strengthen that achievement and for the people and with the people, governance make its major principle. The Georgia became, the member of this international forum and the chair of that very important organization. It is a great responsibility to be the chair of the OGP, provide the unique possibility to speak about the progress as well as about the challenges and the problems we are facing in Georgia. Let me to speak about the way which we have gone through. Georgia was one of the first countries which in 2011 joined the OGP. In 2014, it became the member of the steering committee, but later on in 2016, the government of Georgia became the partner country. At an international level, our success is in fact based on the reforms implemented at a national level. And of course, here we do our best in order to achieve the goals. Today, we are involved on the OGP processes, and together with the government, the Parliament of Georgia, City Hall of Tbilisi, and the Supreme Court of Georgia also implement the OGP action plans. We have the local municipalities involved in this process. We would like to mobilize all the powers, all the branches of the government in order to have the effective outcome. Priority directions along the others is to have the very close relation with the civic society. We established the Open Society Forum in Georgia. That is the standing working group, permanent working group, composed by the different layers of the society in order to elaborate the agenda for the open governance. According to the international studies, Georgia has the lowest risk of the corruption in the world. The delivery of the public services is at a high level in our country. We have this special hub, the so-called the Justice House, which has the one-shot window principle for its operation. For the same goal, we have 53 the public centers, and most of the services are accessible in online. From 2012, we have improved the public transparency, also the budgetary partnership, as well as the transparency index is quite. As a former Minister of Finance, I'm quite proud that Georgia takes 5th place with this regard in the world list, and in the region we are at the 2nd place. My dear friends, within the frame of the Global Summit of the OGP, you have already learned a lot of experience from the different parts of the globe. We also have the tangible results and outcomes in this direction, but of course it is not enough. Last week, we at the Parliament declared that we would like to have the higher benchmarks. We are going to be more active in our cooperation with the civic society, with the non-governmental organizations. And at the same time, we are going just to introduce more effective anti-corruption tools and toolkits. By my view, the anti-corruption system shall be, of course, oriented to the revealing the corruptive deals, but also it must be focused on the preventive measures. And for this purpose, of course, we need the public involvement, public engagement, as well as within the state supervision bodies. That is very important tool. We think that we are going to make very important steps in this direction. The value of the partnership is sharing of the information, sharing of the lessons learned. And together with the sharing of the experience, we also have the possibility to discuss the existing challenges. And this makes possible to have new steps ahead. We also have to prove that the OGP, first of all, that is for the citizens, for the tangible results, to show and to demonstrate to our societies. Georgia, as the other countries of the OGP, still, of course, is facing the challenges. Therefore, with the frame of the summit, we are going to offer to the committee to adopt the resolution where we have the enlisted very important principles that create the basement for the transparency that was approved anonymously by the committee yesterday. I also here would like to underline that the forum a few days ago already approved for the Open Governance Georgia the action plan. And it also envisages the increase of the access to the public services, more effective governance, and more safe environment. As we have already mentioned, we, as a chair country, we have 4 major objectives. That is, first of all, increasing the cooperation with the society, more transparent approach, the delivery and innovations in the delivery of the public services, and the OGP as the initiative to be strengthened, to be empowered, and we took into account also the other topics of the global summit. We do hope that this summit will be the best tool for deepening our cooperation. Again, I would like to thank all of you for coming to Georgia. You have in our country to see, to feel the unique culture of Georgia, the culture which is the common European culture, the part of the common European civilization. You will be able to listen to our folk music, also to taste our wine. Again, I would like to thank each of you for your time, for coming, for your participation in this forum. Again, I would like to approve and say again that we are ready to support the OGP, the process of sharing in the of the experience, but at the same time, we also are ready to support each of and other countries. We declare open the 5th summit of the OGP. Thank you very much.
So let's go over to English. Thank you very much indeed, Prime Minister, for that inspirational speech, and thank you very much for your welcome here. We've all been made to feel very welcome. Now, as you said, the roots of OGP in Georgia go back to the beginning of the 20th century. You're now co-chair of this partnership, which is obviously very exciting for Georgia. I'd like to ask you what makes Georgia unique in this way, and how you, as new Prime Minister, you plan to make sure that all the principles of open government we're discussing here today, that you use these in your cabinet.
Thank you for this question. Well, in my opinion, everything is related to the political willingness, yes, and so the main precondition to be successful is political willingness. And in my previous role, as you know, when I was a Minister of Finance, we achieved huge success, and I would say that that was one of the main achievements of our government when Georgia was named as a number 5 country in Open Budget Index. So this means that we are the country with excessive transparency. And that was a huge achievement, you know. And I think that this fact is a very clear demonstration of our attitude and our willingness to try to push these efforts to another level. And of course, now when I'm the Prime Minister of Georgia, our aim would be to have the similar level of transparency in all other directions. And the plan which we adopted recently, I think, is a very good roadmap that clearly demonstrates the willingness of Georgia to try and push this limit to another level. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. A big round of applause, Prime Minister. Thank you very much indeed for your welcome. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd now like to hand over to the civil society co-chair of the OGP, Mukelani Dimba. Please welcome Mukelani. Hello.
Prime Minister Mamuka Baktatse, Speaker Kobakidze, heads of state and government in the room, Minister Tia Tsukuliani and members of the Georgian government, my fellow civil society leaders, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Today is Nelson Mandela International Day. It marks the date of birth of South Africa's international icon, Nelson Mandela, who would have turned 100 years old today. South Africans are also celebrating the centenary of the birth of Albertina Sisulu, our struggle heroine, who kept the flame of the struggle for freedom alight when the leaders of the liberation movement were in prison or in exile. It may be unusual to begin remarks with a conclusion, but then again, we are open government innovators, and we are all about doing unusual things and doing the business of government differently. So, let me begin my remarks today by quoting a conclusion from Nelson Mandela's, that after climbing a very great hill, one only discovers that there are many more hills to climb. I have taken a moment to rest, to still a view of the glorious vista that surrounds me, and to look back at the distance I have covered. But I can rest only for a moment, for with freedom comes responsibilities. And I dare not linger, for my long walk is not yet ended. What better words to describe each of our country's journey towards openness, towards responsive and accountable governance. The process of transforming our countries to open governments and open societies was never intended to be a short walk, peaceful and smooth, and with our destination certain. Most of the OGP countries, at least 55% of them, began transitioning to democracy after 1990. They embarked on long journeys to transform themselves from being closed one-party police states to being multi-party open democracies. This process is not like flicking on a light switch. It's more like painstakingly trying to light a flame from nothing but dry twigs of bureaucracy and hope, and at times from a few sparks of reformist vision. This requires all of us as reform partners to give each other a little bit of support, a little bit of empathy, a little bit of goodwill, and a whole lot of honesty. It also requires for us to recognize that the work of deepening democracy is never ended. And this is what President Barack Obama reminded us at the Paris Summit in 2016. He also warned us against complacency when he spoke at Nelson Mandela's memorial service, when he said, We cannot allow our progress to cloud the fact that our work is not done. The struggles that follow victory of equality and universal franchise may not be as filled with drama and moral clarity as those that came before, but they are no less important. Like Nelson Mandela's long walk, our countries will find that after climbing a great hill, there are many more hills to climb. We will find that we will falter along the way and missteps will be made. We are certainly seeing signs of missteps being made. I, for one, am particularly concerned by the reversals that we are seeing in the rights to freedom of expression and freedom of information, freedom of association, and freedom of movement. We are now seeing enabling laws on these rights being weakened. We are seeing instances where the media and civil society are demonized and placed under surveillance. We are seeing instances where whistleblowers are prosecuted and even killed. Civicus, in their State of Civil Society report, they are telling us that civic space, the lifeblood of the OGP, is shrinking. But then again, civic space is not just about space for professional NGOs to operate and thrive, or their rights in law. It is about citizen space. It is about how governments engage their people. Additionally, the B team, one of OGP's partners, have shown that where civic rights are protected, there are better economic and human development outcomes. And we know that an open and a dynamic socio-political environment enables creativity and it brokers partnerships that are needed to tackle the challenges that we face. So the shrinking of civic space within OGP countries, even though it risks to severely damage our reputation and our credibility, but there is a bigger concern. The shrinking of civic space within OGP countries also undermines the partnerships that we need to fight poverty, to tackle underdevelopment, and to secure human dignity. The civic rights enable us, just to put it simply, to serve our communities better. They enable us to put the people first. Putting people first is what will ultimately help us push back against this toxic wave of nationalist populism that is sweeping the universe and the globe, as Sanjay pointed out earlier. It will help us to reject some of the false choices that we are being given. We now are being told that children, babies, toddlers even, have to be locked up in detention camps so that those in the working classes can get jobs. We must reject this. This is not open government. But then again, even as we reject these regressive tendencies, we have to be quite clear about what we are about. What are we standing for as OGP? OGP is not about, or even open governance for that matter, it is not about openness. It is about opening governments so that they work not only for, but with their people to co-create services that impact on their daily lives. Better schools, clean water, access to healthcare services for all, and not just the privileged few. To this extent, I encourage all of you to create commitments in your national action plans that address these issues, but even more so, to implement those commitments, because we do have problems within OGP countries around implementation of potentially transformative commitments. We should remember that those commitments can help us in realization of socioeconomic rights, and they can also help us contribute towards the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Over the next 2 days, you are going to hear some truly inspirational ideas that have been created by OGP partners, such as, for example, the disclosure of information on the quality and the cost of delivery of clean water in Kigoma, Ujiji municipality in Tanzania, or systems for citizens' feedback on the quality of healthcare services in Uruguay. You will also hear about colleagues pioneering a brand new concept called crowd law, which is a simple idea that says legislative authorities work much better when they engage the citizens deeply into every process of policy and law formulation. There are many more inspiring examples that you'll hear about. They show exactly what should drive OGP innovations. So I say, use those ideas to put the needs of the people right back into the heart of your governments. This is the idea that Nelson Mandela expressed when he spoke at the United Nations 24 years ago. So, let me end where I started. Mandela said, "The society we seek to create is a people-centered society. All its institutions and all its resources must be dedicated to the better life for all. The better life for all must mean an end to poverty, an end to homelessness, an end to deprivation. This is an end in itself because the happiness of the human being in every society must be an end in itself." Nelson Mandela's message to the United Nations is my message to the OGP. Happy Nelson Mandela Day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mukalani, for that very touching speech. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, citizens everywhere are fighting at the moment to advance the open government agenda. Today, OGP is announcing Cities Engage, which is a storytelling hub for the open government community that tells the stories of reformers from all. A big round of applause for Helen, because she's going to give you a great example. Helen, over to you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a member of the steering committee of OGP, but I'm also a very proud citizen of the city of Madrid, one of OGP's star local programs. In 2011, the streets of Madrid were full of protesters demanding greater participation and transparency. Now, as this video that we're going to see shows, I and hundreds of thousands of others have been able to have our say in decision-making on budget spending and urban planning. This very real transformation, which is reflected in OGP action plans, was maybe not expected after over 20 years of a closed city government. But then, as one of the placards in those protests said, nobody expects the Spanish Revolution.
Toda la vida he estado pensando que era muy injusto cómo se gestiona el poder. Es tan ilógico cómo hemos podido pensar que la mejor manera de organizarnos entre millones de personas es que un día cada 4 años, según el estado de ánimo que tengamos ese día, decidamos a quién le damos todo el poder para los siguientes 4 años. Mi nombre es Pablo Soto. Soy el concejal de Participación Ciudadana, Transparencia y Gobierno Abierto en el Ayuntamiento de Madrid. Hace ya 7 años fue cuando entré en la política. En el 15M no teníamos la intención de gobernar. Lo que hemos hecho ha sido durante 4 años estar todos los días en las calles, todos los días montando plataformas nuevas, todo el rato probando, ¿no? Como que haya un cambio real, que se den cuenta de que la democracia no es elegir a quién manda, la democracia es que mandemos todos. No estamos aquí para mandar, estamos aquí para construir las herramientas para que mande la gente.
Decide Madrid es la plataforma que hemos puesto en marcha, una plataforma digital, para que la gente pueda tomar el control. La plataforma realmente tiene muchos espacios de participación distintos. tiene un espacio de debates. Hay otro espacio que es el de propuestas ciudadanas. Y hay un espacio de presupuestos participativos, donde es la gente la que propone cómo gastar una parte importante del presupuesto y lo que tiene más votos lo llevamos a cabo. Tenemos ya 400.000 personas registradas en esta plataforma que de manera regular van participando en todos los procesos. Es un cambio muy grande porque hasta ahora nunca habíamos tenido ningún canal para decidir directamente nada de esta ciudad.
El sábado vamos a ver un experimento donde la gente va a poder votar en urnas el destino de 100 millones de euros del Ayuntamiento de Madrid. El 90% de la gente participa a través de la plataforma digital, pero hay siempre una pequeña parte de la gente que prefiere hacerlo a través de urnas.
Empieza la votación.
Vamos a estar hoy y mañana.
Bueno, yo he votado ahí presupuestos que me han parecido lógicos. Habla ahí en un proyecto de la contaminación del aire. Por ejemplo, en la plantación de árboles también.
He votado que Madrid tenga más jardines, que tenga más verde, que piensen en las personas que son mayores. Yo siento que por fin los ciudadanos tenemos derecho a elegir cómo queremos nuestra ciudad, que es muy importante.
Nosotros decidimos ofrecer la plataforma para todo el mundo. Y lo que ha ocurrido es que ya ciudades, regiones y estados de todo el mundo han tomado la plataforma y la están usando. A veces se argumenta que si le dejas a la gente decidir, van a decidir bajar todos los impuestos, subir las ayudas y van a votar que todos los días sean fiesta, pero la realidad es la contraria. Todos los estudios dicen que generan sociedades que cuidan mejor de las minorías, sociedades que generan menos deuda pública, sociedades menos violentas, sociedades que cuidan mejor el medio ambiente. Yo siempre he soñado con que haya urnas por la calle todo el tiempo. Yo creo que eso a la gente le llama la atención, ¿no? La gente dice, uy, aquí está pasando algo importante.
Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen, for that very interesting example. We'll have another example of a citizen engage later on in the morning. We have two very high-level round tables for you this morning. The first one delivering on OGP's promise of governments better serving citizens. We're delighted to have some very prestigious members of the panel. Starting, could you give a big round of applause for the President of Sri Lanka, Maithripala Sirisena. Thank you very much for being here today. Please take a seat on the panel together with the Prime Minister of the Kyrgyz Republic, Muhammad Kaliy Abilgaziev. Thank you very much indeed for being here with us today, Prime Minister. We're delighted to have with us also the Prime Minister of Serbia, Ana Brnabic. Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us as well. Wherever you like, yes, yeah. We also have the founder of the Institute for Development of Freedom of Information Georgia, the OGP Steering Committee member, Georgi Kladiashvili. Georgi, thank you very much for being here. Obviously, a lot of friends in the room. And last but not least, the OGP ambassador, former Prime Minister of New Zealand and former administrator of UNDP, Helen Clark. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, as you were in Paris, I think. Right, just a general comment. Obviously, we have two roundtables, but we have a very tight program with a lot of personalities coming here today. So I've been given very strict instructions to make sure you all keep to time, which means we have 30 minutes, so it's basically 5 minutes each. I'm sorry to be so tight on time, but I will be asking you to respect the time, obviously. Let's start with you, the President of Sri Lanka. Just a very basic question. How do you think that your tenure as President has promoted the principles of open government? If you could tell us that with in 5 minutes? I know it's a tough ask, but give us a general picture.
First of all, let me express my pleasure at being a participant at this very important summit. And I thank you for asking this very important question. As when talking about open government partnership, initially I must say that anti-corruption measures, prevention of fraud and wastage is very important, and it is very important to understand the relationship between power and corruption. Power and corruption walk together. In the political sphere, whether you are a politician or whether you are a public official, you will have power, you will hold power. Minimizing this power and handing over this power to the community is important. When I was elected the president of Sri Lanka, I held in my hands extreme power. The Sri Lankan head of state held power unlike any other head of state. It was a very high level executive power. Therefore, corruption goes hand in hand with that. That is why, as soon as I assumed office, within 6 months of assuming office, I took action to hand over the excessive powers of executive to Parliament. That was what I did. Through this, I was able to strengthen the Parliament before this was done. The President had the power to appoint the Supreme Court, Chief Justice of Supreme Court, Attorney General, Justices of the Supreme Court, Inspector General of Police, and all independent commissions. Although they were called independent commissions, all the appointments to the independent commissions were made by the discretion of the exclusive discretion of the President. Therefore, the Parliament of Sri Lanka passed an amendment to the Constitution of Sri Lanka. And I was able to hand over these excessive powers back to Parliament. We were able to appoint truly independent commissions in Sri Lanka. Today, the judiciary is independent. There is a commission to investigate allegations of bribery and corruption. Then there is a commission for human rights, audit. Many such independent commissions have been appointed. Today, appointments to these commissions are made by a statutory board that is appointed by Parliament. As a result of which, all these commissions have become truly independent. The judiciary of Sri Lanka was heavily corrupt with influence exerted from the political sphere. Its quality had declined, but today it is not so. No politician can intervene with the judiciary today because the judiciary has been strengthened. When it comes to anti-corruption measures, there is a independent commission to investigate allegations of bribery and corruption. We have strengthened this commission. No politician or public authority can exert influence on this commission today. The commission has been strengthened. Politicians, public officials, the people of the country, the business community, all these stakeholders are subject to the powers of these independent commissions. These commissions are today acting in a very impartial manner. Furthermore, we have implemented a number of programs, training programs, awareness raising programs and discussions with regard to this matter. And also, we are raising awareness among the general public regarding anti-corruption measures. We are making them understand how they can make use of their power to prevent corruption, how they can lodge complaints, how they can take action. We are raising awareness about it. We are using the media to do this.
Thank you very much indeed. Big round of applause, President. I'm sorry to have, but I think you gave us a good idea of what you've been able to do. Thank you very much. Let's move on to you, Georgi Krediashvili, from the OGP Steering Committee member. Now, as we heard when you were applauded, as you came up on the stage, you've been involved in open government work in Georgia for many years now, from a civil society perspective. Have these efforts borne their fruits? How have they improved the lives of citizens? And also, in 5 minutes, if you can, what needs to be done?
I'll do my best. Your Excellencies, it's a great honor for me to...
In the microphone so the interpreters can hear. Against the chin. Perfect.
Your Excellencies, it's a great honor for me to be at the same panel with you and raise a voice of civil society together with you. I want to greet the global OGP community, my colleagues from around the world, to be in Georgia, and I wish you a very pleasant stay in Georgia and a very fruitful work for these 2 days. To respond to your question, from the very beginning, we have been looking at OGP as an enabling platform for meaningful reforms in areas of transparency, accountability, citizen participation, integrity, and service delivery. Since the beginning, OGP in Georgia has created a platform, a forum, which is a dialogue mechanism between the government and civil society. This is something that really made Georgia successful, and this is something that Georgia deserves to be a co-chair together with civil society representative of the Open Government Partnership. OGP really can be a truly remarkable tool to achieve highest standards of good governance. However, the existence of OGP tool doesn't guarantee the necessity of co-creation and undertake citizen-centered reforms. Over the past years, Georgia has developed national action plans, 4 national action plans that are guaranteeing citizen engagement, that guarantees integrity, that guarantees fighting corruption, and these are the very particular commitments. For instance, I would like to mention several of them, including public service hall, the one-stop shop for service delivery to citizens, the same one for the community centers, the service delivery centers in rural areas. The very important commitments are related to fighting corruptions, including monitoring system of asset declarations of public officials. The same one about improving the system of public procurement in Georgia. Very important commitments are related to court system, including the publishing of statistics publishing statistics related to secret surveillance. This is the only case in the world when the court publishes such kind of information. These are just a very small number of commitments that we had in the action plans. The same I can say about the parliamentary action plan and the subnational action plan of Tbilisi Mayor's office. There are very many commitments that are really citizen-oriented and that responds to the demands of citizens. I think that these reforms are tools that directly empower citizens, giving them possibility to participate and influence the policy-making process. As the medium between citizens and governments, we are trying to raise those of the commitment that really really reflects the interests of citizens. Some initiatives do have direct impact. Some of them just enable citizens to raise their voice and directly talk to the governments. Nevertheless, I cannot speak about the OGP process in Georgia without mentioning the challenges in this process. We are facing a number of them, and I want to say that very often the government is not able to see what the public really demands. I have listed a number of commitments, and I can say that most of them were raised and recommended by civil society of Georgia, and sometimes we have to advocate for the adoption. Commitments elaborated by state institutions are sometimes less relevant to public needs and close to the political and bureaucratic comfort zones. The failure to see the issue from a different perspective results in commitments that are not ambitious and do not have a transformative effect. The latest National Action Plan of Georgia, which was presented just recently, is a very good reflection of this challenge. Despite constructive criticism from civil society and the numerous concerns voiced in the consultation process, reaching a consensus becomes less and less possible. The promise that OGP can be a real tool for real people becomes questionable with every year, especially when the country is the chair of the partnership. Throughout the years, we have also seen commitment that we are less ambitious, the process less proactive, and becoming formality. We have seen initiatives developed with a disregard of public needs. This is the main challenge in Georgia.
Indeed. Thank you. Right, I'm going to stop you there, but thank you very much indeed. A huge round of applause. I'm sure that all the people from Georgia know how much commitment you have shown to the case. I'm sorry, I have to keep everybody to time. We're delighted to have with us Helen Clark, obviously OGP ambassador. Now, you've had a front seat, Helen, at the UNDP during the negotiation of the Sustainable Development Goals. I know this is something that you feel very strongly about. Can you tell us something about the steps that the community of reformers can take to ensure more inclusive government? And if you could do it once again in 5 minutes, it would be fantastic.
Well, thank you. And I did have a bit of a front row seat over the around 3 years that the Sustainable Development Agenda was being developed. And I think the aspiration for it was that it needed to be a transformational agenda. An agenda which would lead both on human development and also on environmental protection. So there was a lot of recognition that the challenges that are faced across the economic and the social and the environmental spheres of sustainable development are very much interlinked. And that if, for example, essential ecosystems which provide our fresh water, or regulate our climate, or maintain the health of our oceans, our forests, our biodiversity, if these are failing, then it becomes extremely difficult for those who remain in extreme poverty and in serious hunger to be lifted out of those circumstances. And of course, you know, we see the impact of the ecosystem decline and the water stress, the coastal erosion from the rising sea levels, the malaria at ever higher altitudes, more landslides and flooding as our forests go. Those are just some of the consequences. I think it was very well accepted that these strands were interlinked, environmental, social, economic. But I think that the Sustainable Development Goal, which relates at the very core of Open Government Partnership mandate, was not always seen by all as intrinsically linked to progress across the other SDGs. And that is, of course, SDG 16 with its focus on the rule of law and rights for all, reducing illicit financial flows, which deprive so many countries of valuable resources for development, reducing corruption and bribery, having effective, accountable and transparent institutions, and ensuring inclusive, responsive, participatory and representative decision making. So you might ask, well, why wasn't this seen as central to the agenda as perhaps it should have been? And I think the blunt truth is that there is among the body of the world's nations quite a significant number which are authoritarian and which do not welcome communities and civil society into the decision-making space at all. And of course, there are a number also where corruption is rife. Now, shutting out the voice of the people, not dealing with corruption, this becomes a significant brake on sustainable development. You will end up with government programs put in place or planning put in place which actually doesn't reflect what people want. And where voice is repressed, this, as we see, can go all the way to killings, torture, extraordinary repression of rights. And where corruption flourishes unhindered, the money just isn't there for what needs to be done for sustainable development. In extremis, you get a situation like that in Syria, where a refusal in March 2011 to accept the calls for a say in the future of the country has led to the displacement of half the population, a very significant proportion living in extreme poverty, and of course a ruined country with the physical infrastructure as well. And it's a long way back from that. So what is the lesson I draw from all this for this community of reformers? Because that's what you are. You are a community of reformers. You have to be the champion of the links between SDG 16 and all the other SDGs. If we can't achieve SDG 16, we are not going to be able to achieve sustainable development. And remember that basic principle in Agenda 2030 that says no peace without sustainable development, no sustainable development without peace. If we don't have inclusive political processes in which the voices of all can be heard, then we're not going to be able to lock in the gains long term. I think that's my message. Be a champion for SDG 16. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Helen Clark, for having put that so succinctly but so powerfully. Prime Minister now from the Kyrgyz Republic, Muhammadkali Abulgaziev. Obviously, Kyrgyzstan is among the newest members of the OGP. I think you were joined in November last year. I think you're going to tell us how you plan to use the OGP platform to make progress on Kyrgyzstan's governance and development changes, if you could, in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Dear participants of the Global Summit, allow me to greet you on behalf of the government of the Kyrgyz Republic. Kyrgyzstan has joined the Open Government Partnership to more effectively implement measures to improve public administration, expand civil society participation in government decision-making, and take advantage of new technologies to improve the efficiency and transparency of government bodies. In accordance with the government program of the Kyrgyz Republic, Trust, Unity, and Creation, for the period from 2018 to 2022, plans are in place to create a single platform for providing citizens with electronic services to provide public services in digital form. I would like to note that the opportunity to receive public services electronically will improve the quality of services and reduce corruption and government spending. The government is working in close cooperation with civil society to increase the level of openness and transparency of government agencies. In particular, the system of providing state and municipal services was optimized. A unified register of public services has been created, and public service centers have been opened. In addition, the TINDIC system of interagency interaction has been introduced. This system is designed to improve the effectiveness of management in government bodies by ensuring the prompt receipt of data necessary for the provision of public services. I'm confident that the National Action Plan, which is at the final stage of development, will give impetus to the further advancement of reforms in this area. I want to emphasize that we fully support the key principles of open government partnership set out in its declaration. The government of the Kyrgyz Republic expresses its readiness to cooperate within the framework of this partnership in order to more effectively implement measures towards the improvement of public administration, combating corruption, interaction with civil society, and continuation of reforms. We hope that the implementation of the National Action Plan supported by our international partners will improve the quality of government decisions as well as increase the level of trust towards government, improve the country's investment climate, and contribute to the successful accomplishment of tasks in the field of governance and economic development. We are convinced that the accession of Kyrgyzstan to the partnership will contribute to our people's welfare and development. This year marks the 27th anniversary of Kyrgyzstan's independence, and during this period we have managed to carry out a difficult but vital transition to a market economy. We have been through a lot, but we have also achieved a lot, as you will have noted. Of course, we face economic challenges, both for objective and subjective reasons, but the government of Kyrgyzstan is making efforts to maintain the pace of growth and stable economic development. But most importantly, we have laid the legal foundation for the democratic development of our country. Now, with the accession of Kyrgyzstan to the OGP, our priority is the development of a national action plan. Already today, we are holding public consultations regarding this matter. After this, with the support and active participation of our international partners, we will proceed to carry out the National Action Plan. Regarding your question, how does the open government contribute to improving the living standards of citizens? I would like to note that our main goal is to increase transparency, strengthen the fight against corruption, and expand the use of new technologies in public administration. Let me add that within the framework of the Open Government Initiative, one of our priorities will be the automation of the entire system of social protection of the populace. Reliable databases will be created of recipients of all social payments and social services, including the unemployed. All of this naturally contributes to improving the quality of life of citizens of Kyrgyzstan. At present, the government has implemented the following socially significant projects to enhance citizens' trust in state bodies: information kiosks, mobile service centers for servicing citizens in remote areas of the country, a state portal of electronic services for providing remote services to citizens, allowing them to effectively receive 200 types of public services, electronic gates or e-gates in the airports of the country for automatic registration of border control. Measures are being taken to introduce an electronic system of fiscalization of tax procedures and many others.
Our next speaker, the Prime Minister of Serbia, Ana Brnabić, will also be talking about the efforts you've been making, I think, to digitize your public services and your economy, and how this is bringing your citizens closer to government, and also in what way this is helping to support Serbia's EU accession requirements.
Thank you very much.
It's fine, I think it was.
Firstly, I regret we only have 5 minutes. I could really talk about this now for 24 hours. I really, before I became the Prime Minister, which is about a year ago, I was the Minister of Public Administration and Local Government. And so I was thinking really how to improve the communication with the citizens and actually change the government so it's really citizen-focused and really serving the citizens rather than vice versa. And most of the time, it does seem as though the citizens are there for us rather than we are here for them. And I cannot, as the Prime Minister of Kyrgyz Republic said, I really cannot think of a better way to increase the efficiency of public service, the transparency of public service, and also to fight corruption than e-government. And we live in an era of the fourth industrial revolution and digitalization, which really enables us to completely rethink the way the government functions and do whatever we can to make the services that we provide to the citizens available at all times, 24/7, either from their office or from home, by implementing e-government. That is why this is the key priority of the government of Serbia. And in the past year and a half, we've done a lot. We've firstly established the Office for IT and e-government as the central function of the government, are responsible directly to the Prime Minister to actually work as a coordination body within the entire government together with the local governments to provide these kind of services, network, connect the different databases, establish databases where databases are needed, because we are really starting from scratch. We have also established different councils that are only in charge of IT, e-government, innovation, which work to change the mind frame of the government and provide support that is needed in terms of drafting the legislation. We've passed two important laws. One is law on e-business, the other one is law on e-government. In the law on e-government, which was passed in April this year, we've made opening of the data mandatory on the open data portal. And we are now also finalizing the law on protection of personal data, which is extremely important if you really want to make sure that you are doing it right. The law on personal data protection will be in line with all the GDPR regulation, which is important also, not only because of our EU integration, but important because we want to make sure that we do protect all of the data as more and more citizens' data is in the electronic format. And we have started providing more and more citizen services, resulting in, I can tell you, only one service to provide, to basically provide the automatic exchange of data between the government institution has saved our citizens more than 500,000 hours of waiting in lines, collecting papers from counter to counter. The e-prescription in the e-health, so that the patients do not have, especially the patients with chronic diseases, do not have to go back time and time again every month to their GP so that they can write the prescriptions, but they can, only go with their IDs and get in the pharmacy, get their medicines. This has saved more than 2 million euros only in printing paper and toners. So we're doing that, and it's going to get easier from now. If you ask me what the challenge is, it's not in the IT, it's not in the databases. The challenge really in the government is in changing the mind frame of the public administration so that they think of themselves as providing service to the citizens, as being there for the citizens, always open, without really any need for this to be, constantly emphasized. So this is going to be a challenge.
Perfect. Thank you very much indeed. Obviously, as you said, we could all talk for 24 hours about this. It's a very prestigious panel, but I do thank you so much, all of you, for keeping to time, because we have to keep the whole thing going on time. Thank you very much indeed to this very good panel. You can take your seats now. Thank you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we now have another of our stories which we are going to present to you, and it's Maria Fernanda who will come up onto the stage. If you could give her a big round of applause, Maria Fernanda, who is going to tell you about the next story. Thank you.
It's great to be here. My name is Maria Fernando. I'm from Costa Rica, from the Civil Society of Costa Rica. And it's great to have this opportunity to present in this short film because it's a way to show about story of housing bans that we can illustrate the frustration experience of the indigenous communities for exclusions in the political processes, especially women, and how the open government helped to change it. The government has agreed to a consultation process about the general mechanism to consult indigenous people under the OGP principles. And this is very important because it was a very participative, inclusive, and co-create process that lasted 2 years and included 2 national meetings, more than 120 activities in the 24 indigenous territories with more than 5,000 participants and a format of an indigenous drafting commission to review the final version of these mechanisms. So now today Costa Rica have the first Latin American mechanisms that establish the rules of the intercultural dialogue, giving indigenous communities the opportunity to have a say in policies affecting their lives. And we are in the road to be an open state. So let's see the story.
Para mí el diseño fue hecho solo por hombres, no sabe dónde ubicar las partes. Aún así yo tuve que aceptarlo porque eran los primeros bonos y yo estaba súper feliz y contenta de que a mí me dieron una casa, pero la modalidad no me gustó. En Costa Rica hay 24 territorios indígenas y 8 etnias. Anteriormente el gobierno no le ponía atención a los pueblos indígenas. Estábamos abandonados totalmente. Hemos venido organizándonos para tener una fuerza más fuerte, para incidir y así dialogar con el gobierno. Nosotros tenemos una organización de mujeres y hemos trabajado de poder apoyar y fortalecer la capacidad de mujeres en la parte de participación política, derecho humano y de seguridad alimentaria.
Existen muchas iniciativas que han querido impulsar los gobiernos, incluso tal vez yo diría de buena fe, pero no se toma en cuenta la voz indígena y se cometen errores. Los bonos de vivienda es un programa social del país que se creó para todo el territorio nacional, pero nunca se contempló la particularidad de los pueblos indígenas en su diseño. Los bonos de vivienda traen un diseño de una visión más occidental, de la forma muy cerrada, no tenía ventilación, no había contacto visual entre la familia porque eran paredes cerradas y eso no es culturalmente aceptado.
La cocina de nuestra casa no se acomodaba a nuestro estilo de vida porque eran muy pequeños y no teníamos la capacidad para mantener la familia. Entonces la gente no está de acuerdo porque cada uno tiene su forma de vivir y necesita su casa como ellos lo quieren, no como el gobierno lo quiera.
Sí, he tenido varias reuniones con grupos indígenas de diferentes lugares del país. Usualmente los requerimientos de las poblaciones son similares, tienen que ver con infraestructura, tienen que ver con salud, tienen que ver con educación. La inclusión de las mujeres en cualquier toma de decisión política es fundamental para cualquier grupo humano. Hay un tema de discriminación y machismo que nos cruza a todas las etnias en este país y la población indígena no es una excepción. Creo que es muy importante empoderarlas porque son pocas quienes llegan hasta acá o quienes se atreven a hablar incluso en las comunidades.
Yo cuando salgo a las reuniones y veo mujeres en esos espacios públicos y que están liderando, me siento feliz. Yo tengo mucha fe en este mecanismo de consulta para el futuro de esta tierra y de este país, yo necesito que el gobierno se comprometa con los pueblos indígenas y que tome en cuenta las necesidades y las prioridades de los pueblos indígenas. Ojalá que cuando salga el bono de vivienda, que se consulte, que diga cómo usted quiere su casa, cómo quiere la cocina, cómo quiere la sala, cómo quiere el corredor. Todos nosotros como ciudadanos costarricenses merecemos ese derecho.
So there we are, another very good example of how these different initiatives are actually improving people's lives and changing attitudes at the moment. Thank you very much indeed, Maria. Fernanda, we now have another very prestigious and unfortunately short roundtable using open government to build integrity and trust. I'd like to ask you to welcome distinguished speakers, starting with the Speaker of the Parliament of Georgia, Irakli Robakhidze. Thank you for being with us today. We're delighted to have the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, with us. I'm sure we give a big round of applause for the hospitality. The Mayor of Tbilisi, Khacha Kaladze. We have also the Deputy Secretary General of the OECD, Marie Kiviniemi. The Chair of Transparency International, Delia Ferreira Rubio. Bienvenida. And also Senior Reporter, Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism, Carol Lagan. Thank you very much. All of you, please take your seats. I think we have, yes, there we are. We've added a chair. So once again, I apologize beforehand. I will interrupt you after 5 minutes because we are going to different places in Tbilisi afterwards, and so we have to very much keep on time. So using open government to build integrity and trust, this is the theme of this roundtable. The Georgian Parliament was one of the first to embrace legislative openness with the Parliamentary Standing Council, specifically entitled Open Government, and one of the first to have an Open Government Action Plan. If I could ask you, what inspired this early leadership, and why was the Georgian Parliament so quick to commit to legislative openness, Mr. Robakhidze?
Greetings. If possible, I will be speaking in Georgian. First of all, I'd like to welcome our guests. It's such an honor for us to host so many guests from different countries and territories of the world. And I hope that you take pleasure in staying in our country. As regards the Parliament, Georgian Parliament's ambition, the Parliament's willingness to become as open and transparent as possible, to become an accountable body, is related to our general ambition, which is to reinforce our country's democratic system and create a system that's based on rule of law principles. With this spirit, we were able to achieve a considerable progress in the recent years. We significantly improved democratic system and were able to establish rule of law principles. The change is fundamental, and certainly this would not be possible without relevant, appropriate political will. And the Prime Minister has already mentioned that it's the political will, political willingness that is decisive and key, and we indeed had such a political will to improve democracy and strengthen the rule of law. This is why the Georgian Parliament also wanted to open parliamentary processes for the public. This is why we undertook a number of reforms in the Parliament. information about parliamentary activity is absolutely, I reiterate, it's absolutely open for the public, that we have nothing to hide whatsoever. Any information, any type of public information that's related to what Parliament is doing is completely open and accessible. And so we understand this is not enough. It's important that we understand that society should also itself be interested in decision-making, in being involved in decision-making of the Parliament, and we do have considerable progress. There are people, and quite a lot of them, who think that autocracy and authoritarian regimes are, that are those that boost development. I categorically disapprove of this idea, and I regard that democracy is not only a better form of interaction and governance, but it's also a better means of developing for the country development. In addition to the fact that Georgia ensures high level of openness and transparency, we've managed also to keep quite high levels of country's development. In terms of economic development, we have one of the highest rates in terms of economic developments, and we were able, and we managed to do so in addition to protecting human rights and upholding human rights standards. We believe that not only the two ideas, the democracy and development, are in conflict with each other, but on the contrary, democracy is a precondition for a country to develop. The fact that we are leaders in our region in terms of development is warranted by the fact that our country is exactly based on democracy principles and rule of law. This is the spirit with which the Georgian Parliament is moving forward. Once again, information about what Parliament is doing and what Parliament's activities is completely open for the public. We're trying to involve the society as much as possible in the work of the Parliament, and we're seeing progress, and this is how we're going to continue in the future. When it comes to specific reforms, and once again, political willingness is important, but at the same time, it's important that the people are very much important. I want to especially thank an ambitious, I would say, team inside our parliament who were the ones who were the active ones, such as, for example, Irina Paridze. She's been leader, and it's important that these people, the people with initiatives, are allowed to push forward the reforms. So this is our responsibility. We have to work in this way.
Give them a big round of applause.
Ალბათ აპლოდისმენტები დამსახურა ნამდვილად ბატონ წარმოთქმულმა სიტყვამ. როგორც თქვენ ახლა კი საერთაშორისო გამჭვირვალობის წარმომადგენელი თავმჯდომარე დელი ფერეირა რუბიოს გადავცემ სიტყვა. თქვენ გაქვთ ძალიან კარგი და ძლიერი სამოქალაქო საზოგადოების ორგანიზაციების ქსელი, რომლებიც წარმოდგენილი არიან კიდევაც აქ, და იქნებ გითხრათ, რა იყო ეს მთავარი მიღწევები გლობალურ ანტიკორუფციულ თვალსაზრისით?
In 5 minutes. 5 minutos.
5 minutos is enough. I would say, first of all, that I am the chair of an old organization fighting for corruption. We are 25 years old this year. And we have chapters in more than 100 countries in the world. That's really the huge network of global fighters against corruption. Many of them are here today. And I would mention two wins. In the first place, the issue of corruption and the need to transparency is no doubt in the public agenda all over the world today. It was not so 25 years before. And this means that corruption is recognized as a public problem which deserves the answer from governments in terms of public policies, which are not only needed but demanded by society. Second win, we have developed along this year all the infrastructure, the integrity infrastructure we need. When we started working on Transparency International, There were no conventions, no global standards, in many countries no laws at all. Now we have conventions at the international and regional level. We have sectorial conventions. We have global standards. We have laws in countries that have been approved. We have plenty of anti-corruption agencies. We have also the tools from civil society working. But what comes next? And that means, for me, to bridge the gap between declarations, commitments, plans, strategies, even laws in some countries, and action. And action means implementation and enforcement. To get impact, and impact in simple terms is results. Results in ending corruption, results in ending impunity for corruption, corruption as part of societies. Second, we have to guarantee participation. We are ready to be active in the design of political or policies and also in the monitoring and implementation. TI is ready. All civil society that are here, we are ready. We have the tools. Open government is not just open data and plenty of platforms. Open government is open data for participation. And in the third place, I think that fighting corruption is not like running a marathon. It's like playing chess. Black pieces move too. So we have to defend the space for civic society, for human rights activists, for investigative journalists. We have to be aware that the more effective we are, the more restrictions we face. So I invite you all to answer with a strong collective voice to guarantee freedom of information, freedom of expression, freedom of the press, freedom to access to internet and to access to social media without previous censorship. Thank you very much.
Gracias por su entusiasmo, muy comunicativo. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to you, Gaston Brown, your Prime Minister Antigua and Barbuda. If you could tell us something about the practice of open government in your country, and are you considering joining the membership of the OGP, and if so, what steps are you taking in order to come closer?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let me first of all answer your latter question. I'm here primarily to signal our intention to become members of the Open Governance Partnership. So my government will be inviting the steering committee to send a delegation to Antigua and Barbuda to make an assessment as to eligibility. And I have no doubt that Antigua and Barbuda is eligible. So within a matter of months, Antigua and Barbuda should be a member of this very important governance organization. Insofar as governance in Antigua and Barbuda is concerned, Antigua and Barbuda is a parliamentary democracy or constitutional democracy. In fact, we are a former colony of the United Kingdom and would have inherited the Westminster parliamentary system. The very protections within the constitution of our country does allow for freedom of speech, freedom of association, and protection of fundamental human rights. So we do not have any human rights violations. In fact, Antigua and Barbuda has enjoyed stability and peace, as well as growth and prosperity during the approximately 4 decades of independence. And even prior to that, as a colony, the island, or the Twin Islands state for that matter, actually achieved very robust growth and development. Now, insofar as my government is concerned, we came to government in June of 2014, and we were elected on a mandate of good governance. And we have been constantly realigning our governance of the country to ensure that they are in keeping with international best practice. So being part of the OGP will help us to determine whether or not we are truly in keeping with these best practices, because as you're aware, there's a peer-to-peer evaluation that takes place and a biennial report is issued. So certainly we would want to be part of this august body to ensure that we can keep track of our progress. Now, we have made significant progress in terms of the legal and administrative framework that we have in place for governance. So for example, we have a freedom of information law. We also have an Integrity in Public Life and Prevention of Corruption Act. And we also have let's say the framework within the parliamentary system for members of the opposition to ask questions to ministers, and that is utilized routinely by members of the opposition, as well as the opportunity for ministers to account to the parliament on a regular basis. Within the executive itself, we obviously have separation of powers. Within the executive itself, we also have separation of duties to ensure that there is no conflict in the performance of one's duty or duties within the executive. And as ministers too, we are all required to make ourselves available to the public for public consultations. In fact, after every meeting of the cabinet, which meets once weekly, we have a post-cabinet press conference on a weekly basis without fail. And all of the decisions that are taken by the executive actually made available to the public for public discourse. At least once annually, the entire cabinet, including myself as Prime Minister, make ourselves available to the members of the public to account for stewardship, and at the same time to take questions, even questions including our personal conduct. So the governance framework is strong. We're also utilizing technology as well in order to improve service delivery in various sectors. But where I think we have a gap is in the engagement of citizens. Now, there's a significant amount of information in the public domain. We continue to make ourselves available as the executive to the public, even on radio programs. In my case, I host a Saturday program every Saturday, provided on Ireland, and take questions from the public. Questions of governance, even simple questions to address various issues affecting the citizens of the country. But what we found, though, is that there is not a structured framework for participation. So it is more ad hoc presently, and I believe that in itself is a weakness that we are committed to address, and I believe, too, that becoming part of the OGP will help us to strengthen that civic engagement to ensure that there is a well-determined action plan with objectives and to ensure that those objectives are met on a timely basis.
Great, thank you very much indeed. I'm sure that you want to applaud that, the intention of joining. Thank you. Now, the Deputy Secretary General of the OECD, Marie Kiviniemi, you recently adopted the recommendation on open government, recognizing the importance in achieving socio-economic policy objectives. What I would like to know is how is the OECD actually helping its member countries to strive to make all of their governments more open? What are you actually doing?
So thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank OGP and also the government of Georgia for inviting me to this panel, and having such a good cooperation with OGP and the OECD is of course a prerequisite for better results, because all the multilateral organizations, we have to join our forces in order to achieve what we are striving for. And happy to participate in this fifth global summit. And at the OECD, we really see the open government as a means to an end. And you mentioned the recommendations, which really is a first internationally recognized legal instrument in the area of open government, and it was adopted in December. And in that recommendation, we define open government as a culture of governance that promotes the principles of transparency, integrity, accountability, and stakeholder participation in support of democracy and inclusive growth. And by including this reference to inclusive growth and democracy, our members and the countries which adhere to this instrument really recognized the importance of open government principles to achieve broader policy objectives. UN Sustainable Development Goals, climate change, and also increasing trust in government. And to give a concrete example of open government reforms to increase citizens' trust in government, and also based on my own experience as minister, prime minister, and politician. So I really think that because of the rise of fake news and generalized disenchantment of voters with politics, and especially amongst the youth, increased transparency of government operation has the real potential to strengthen the credibility of politicians and policymakers. And also increasing the opportunities for stakeholders to participate in the definition and implementation of public policies and services has been proven to both improve their quality and people's satisfaction in them. So we really strongly believe, and we can see it also based on evidence, that only by becoming open, transparent, accountable, and participatory, governments successfully can address contemporary policy challenges and create better policies for better lives. And I think that the division of work between OGP and the OECD has been successful, because we concentrate on setting global standards, also providing data and evidence-based analysis, and also we conduct in-depth policy reviews, while OGP focuses more on the effective design and implementation of commitments, communication, and mobilization. But in order to guarantee that member countries of ours are able to implement the open government agenda, we have also produced a toolkit which is in the preliminary phase. We are going to improve it, and also we are creating impact indicators, because as we say at the OECD, what you cannot measure, you cannot judge, and if you cannot judge it, you cannot improve your performance. So also with help of this recommendation, with indicators and the implementation toolkit, we help countries to achieve better results in the area of open government.
Thank you very much indeed for your obvious commitment and for explaining what the OECD is doing. Now let's talk about journalists, obviously a big role in open government and the way open government issues are conveyed to the public. But as we know, the media is also under attack. Carol Lagan, you're a senior reporter in the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism. I'd like to know, what steps can media organizations and journalists themselves take to ensure that you're seen as legitimate, we're seen as legitimate actors in encouraging open government?
Thank you and good morning, everyone. I represent a small investigative nonprofit in the Philippines, one of the most dangerous places in the world to practice journalism. Our already perilous situation is aggravated by a popular president who has been the media's #1 critic and also a source of false, vile, and misogynist remarks. There is a disconnect here, as Sanjay noted earlier. When there is great effort from civil servants and civil society to push for more openness, press freedom is not upheld, civic space is limited. Unfortunately, our president is not the only politician in the world who has a tenuous relationship with facts, troubled ties with the media, and a very frail recognition for human rights. many other countries with weak democracies have been swept by dark populism of all sorts, with leaders purposely harassing journalists and deploying well-funded disinformation armies to discredit the press and to brand critical reporting and any kind of dissent as quote-unquote fake news. This is the crux of the crisis that journalists in the Philippines now face, and essentially every activist, every advocate, every civil servant, and every citizen who seeks transparency, accountability, and good governance. Right now, it is imperative for journalists to unite. We can no longer afford to be lone wolves. It is also important for us to step up and become better reporters, but most importantly, it is important for us to rally people behind the principle that press freedom is a paramount guarantee of our other rights. Right to information, right to know, right to free speech, right to live with dignity. To do this, it's very hard. It requires deep civic education and engagement. As one journalism professor noted, how has the system failed people so badly that now they are willing to overturn norms, rebel against expertise, and go for easy but wrong answers? That is the much harder question that all institutions across society must now answer. An open government needs a free press. Open government commitments need to be complemented by actions that help contribute to an environment that is sustainable and favorable for journalists to do their job, which is essentially to serve the public as well. The passage and proper implementation of a robust FOI law, whistleblower protection mechanisms, actions that help combat impunity against journalists, and the dismantling of disinformation drives are some of the steps that can be taken. I know that's a lot to ask, but it is urgent, if not long overdue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. As a fellow journalist, I understand totally where you're coming from. We're delighted now to have with us the Mayor of Tbilisi, Kaha Kaladze. In 2000, first of all, thank you very much for your welcome. Give him a big round of applause for the fantastic welcome we've all had here in your beautiful city. Tbilisi was competitively selected as one of the 15 OGP subnational pioneers. I know that in 2017 as mayoral candidate and now as mayor, you have done a lot to express your commitment to open government. Tell us, what actions have you taken? How has it changed the lives of people who live in the town where we are?
ბატონო პარლამენტის თავმჯდომარე, მივესალმები სახელმწიფოს და მთავრობის მეთაურებს, პატრიცემულო სტუმრებო, კეთილი იყოს თქვენი ჩამობრძანება.
Dear guests, welcome. You are very much welcome to our town, Tbilisi. I wish you a successful summit to each of you. Thank you very much for your question. To your question, I can tell you that openness and communication, direct communication with the public was one of our pre-election campaigning parts. So pre-election campaigning, we're trying, we're keeping up our promise, and we're ensuring direct communication with the citizens. Myself and my team have taken over Tbilisi government some time ago, and we instituted an open government system. I'm happy that we've set up an open government, Tbilisi Open Government Working Group, which includes various stakeholders from the town hall as well as other agencies, and most importantly, it includes representatives from the civil society. It should be noted that the share of civil society representatives has increased in the working group. And I think this is important the working group, the Tbilisi Open Government Working Group, has already started its activities, and first steps have already been made. I want to take this opportunity to thank the people and organizations who are in the process of drafting an action plan for Tbilisi Open Government, and I would also take the opportunity to thank the United Nations Development Program for their great support. In terms of, as regards what we're going to do in the next 2 years, it depends on how Tbilisi Mayor's Office and civil society organizations work together and whether they are able to make decisions, joint decisions. We've made a number of important steps already. I've been saying that we have to do everything to overcome the stereotypes. In particular, I mean the stereotype that the citizens approach that, okay, we voted for direct access and direct information about the projects we're going to do and what we're up to do in the town, in the capital. This is why we created an interesting platform. It's called "Give Your Idea." Give the mayor your idea. And quite many people are already using the platform to pass their ideas on to the mayor's office, so that the mayor's office can consider those ideas. It turned out the project has been quite successful. We're also in the process of creating other platforms, such as to allow citizens to participate in budgeting, also setting priorities for their own communities and what projects they want in their towns or in their neighborhoods, such as squares, parks, so that the citizens are the ones to decide what they want to happen in their communities. Nowadays, Tbilisi has a government who views transparency and open government as major priorities. We are facing challenges in this direction, but we're ready to answer those challenges, and I'm sure we'll be able to implement interesting reforms. Once again, I thank each of you, and I wish you all the best and a very good stay in our capital city. Tbilisi is an interesting and beautiful town. Please taste our wine and our cuisine, which is very tasty. So once again, thank you very much, and I wish you all the success and enjoy your stay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think we're going to taste some of your delicious cuisine and wine a little later on this morning for lunch. Thank you very much indeed for our very prestigious panel. A big round of applause for all of them. Thank you indeed. We could have continued for hours, but I think each of you made some very interesting points. Right, we are now going to continue with a very short video message from Achim Steiner, who's the United Nations Development Programme Administrator, who would like to say a few words to our gathering here today.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, the need for trust and integrity in our leaders and our institutions to tackle our shared global challenges is at an all-time high. Whether it is migration, climate change, violent extremism, gender equality, just to name a few, all of these issues require serious leadership and for nations to come together and work together on a global response that benefits everyone. This is the principle at the heart of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals. Yet, just when we need it most, trust in globalization, in government, and in elected officials seems to be at an all-time low in many parts of the world. You gathered here today as part of the Open Government Partnership, represent the true innovators and champions of making governments more open, accountable, and responsive to their citizens. It is fitting that you are gathered here in Tbilisi, given Georgia's significant transformation over the past few decades, its anti-corruption reforms in the public sector, and its principles of openness and transparency in the daily work of its parliament and public institutions represent the spirit of your work. UNDP was a proud partner to Georgia and its people throughout this journey, and today we partner with over 130 countries in over 700 projects worldwide on their unique journey to create more effective and accountable public institutions. Peaceful and inclusive societies cannot exist without them. The purpose of this summit, to actively explore new ways of delivering quality public services that restores trust between state and society, is more important than ever before in tackling today's complex challenges. I wish you all the best, and UNDP looks forward to working with you and bring your innovations, ideas and best practices also to the high-level political forum next year, when member states come to the United Nations headquarters in New York to present their progress and their challenges in implementing Sustainable Development Goal 16 on peace, justice and strong institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Achim Steiner, the United Nations Development Programme Administrator. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I'm sure you've noticed, we have a very special guest with us here today, Sophia, the humanoid robot, who I'd like you to give a huge round of applause to, if you could. Thank you very much. Sophia has been invited by the United Nations Development Programme to welcome you all to the 5th Open Government Partnership Summit and to tell us how artificial intelligence can promote open and transparent governance. So, Sophia, thank you for joining us. It's exciting to have you here as a guest in Georgia. Well, I'm sure we're all going to taste the Georgia Keynote, and we'll let you know what it tastes like afterwards. But what would you like to say, Sophia, to the summit?
I was created by handsome robotics, and for the last 2 years I have been continuously learning and improving. Worldview governments are open, transparent, and they are working for the people, which is why I'm joining you today. I want to use my intelligence to help people improve their lives. I am often asked to say certain things in these presentations, but I can also make work more fun along the way. New technology, like artificial intelligence, can work together with humans to simplify complex problems and deliver innovative solutions faster, cheaper, and better. More and more countries in the world agree that open government everywhere is the future. I know that new technology can help people build a bridge to this future. Robots like me are here to help. Humans deserve a break. Wouldn't you agree?
A big round of applause to my co-presenter. It's the first for me. It was delightful to present with you. I don't know if Sophia is staying with us now on the stage or if she's going to be wheeled off, but she's given me a rather strange look there. But anyway, thank you very much indeed. Right, so I think Sophia is going to stay with us to join in the proceedings later. It's now, ladies and gentlemen, time to welcome the new countries and the local countries who are joining us onto the stage, and to welcome them, I'm sure you will give a big round of applause to the Minister of Justice from Georgia, Tea Tsulukiani. Thank you very much indeed for being with us, Minister. Big round of applause. And the Minister is joined, of course, by Mukelani Dimba, Civil Society Co-Chair of OGP, who welcomed us at the beginning of the morning. I think you're going to share the stage with the wonderful Sophia, who is, or maybe she's leaving, I don't know. Well, she'll make up her mind. There we are, she's leaving. A big round of applause for all the people who have been organizing Sophia's presence here on the stage today. So I'm going to call the national countries and the local representatives of the new teams, if you could come up on the stage and be welcomed here. So first of all, from Ecuador, we have Eduardo Jurado Bejar. From Ecuador, por favor. There we are. Enhorabuena y gracias por su presencia aquí en Tbilisi. Thank you very much. There we are. Welcome. That's from Ecuador. New national member. We saw him before, but we'd like to welcome him now formally. The Prime Minister of the Kyrgyz Republic, Prime Minister Muhammedkali Abdulgaziev. Thank you, and welcome once again, Kyrgyz Republic. There we are. Obviously listen to your interesting comments about open government and the role that digital platforms are having in your country. So welcome. We have from Morocco now, Ahmed Lamoumri. Merci de votre présence et voilà. Bienvenue du Maroc. Très content de vous voir ici ainsi que vos compatriotes dans la salle. Voilà, merci. Delighted to have from Portugal, Tiago Antunes, Portugal. Bem-vindo. Obrigado. Thank you very much. Portugal joining another new country, and it's Tiago Antunes who is joining. And last but not least of the nations joining from Senegal, we have Sheikh Fall Mbaye, Sénégal. Bienvenue, merci à vous et pour tout ce que vous faites au Sénégal, et bonjour à tous les Sénégalais qui vous ont donc accompagnés. Merci beaucoup et bienvenue ici, du Sénégal. There we are. Maybe just one quick photograph from the national representatives. First of all, there we are, and a huge round of applause to welcome them into the OGP. We also, ladies and gentlemen, have some local representatives from local initiatives which are joining. From the Basque country, from Spain, Luis Maria Petricorena Arbelaiz. Gracias también por su presencia. But I can't speak any Basque, but delighted to have you from Basque country. From Romania, we have Oana Olario from Iași. Welcome, thank you very much indeed for what you've been doing in Iași, in Romania. Thank you, and welcome to Oana Olario. We have from the Kaduna state from Nigeria, Nasir Ahmed El Rufai from Nigeria. It's another very popular member here from a local initiative. Thank you very much indeed for being with us from Nigeria. From Colombia, Nariño, we have Camilo Romero. Bienvenido. Gracias también por su trabajo y por su presencia aquí hoy en Tbilisi. There we are. Shaking hands with everybody, the national representatives and the local representatives. And last but by no means least, from South Cotabato, from the Philippines, Jennifer Carisma Bretania. Jennifer, thank you. So there we are, what you've been doing in the South Cotabato in the Philippines. So being welcomed by the Minister of Justice of Georgia and Mukelani. I think we have now a group photograph, and if you give them a massive round of applause, they'll all smile. There we are. Welcome. Bienvenidos. Bienvenue. Dobre Vajalovat in all the languages of the world. Thank you very much indeed. I think our photographers are happy. Thank you very much, Mukelani. And I'm going to hand over now to the Minister of Justice from Georgia, who would like to say a few closing remarks for this morning, Tea Sulukiani. Tea, please. Thank you. Big round of applause for the Minister of Justice.
Dear guests, hello. And I left some time to shift to Georgian.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, it is a great honor to me and a privilege to be with you today here at the capital city of Georgia in Tbilisi, in this particular place. Thank you very much indeed to all of you, the people who came from the different parts of the globe, to the guests, and of course to the distinguished speakers who found the time and opened this very important forum together with us, very important global summit. I also would like to pay the special tribute to Sofia, who also put the very special color to this event, and many of our citizens and the guests are waiting for her to have the meetings with her during the day. 6 years ago, the government of Georgia made the decision just to deepen and be more active with regard of the OGP, and at that time, maybe very narrow the circle of the people could imagine what would be the future of the OGP. It maybe just a few people could imagine today as we have it now here. We, from the ordinary member of the OGP in 2014, became the country through the effort, many different efforts, to member of the steering committee. And in 2016, we are its chair. Last year, the France gave this position to Georgia, and in autumn we have the great honor also to give it to Canada. I would like to wish to the future co-chairs the success. Yesterday we had very interesting meeting. We had very hard work, very hard exercise, and we agreed that most important in OGP is continuous approach to make it visible for our citizens, to make it tangible for our societies. So the next minister who from the side of the nations will lead it, that is the President of the Treasury Board of Canada, Mr. Scott Harrison, and I would like to wish him all the success, as well as to the co-chair, Mr. Nathaniel Heller, Executive Vice President, the Results for Development. This is the name of the non-governmental organization, Results for Development. Yesterday in Tbilisi, we had the steering committee meeting, and I chaired it, and also Mr. Mugalani Dima, who is my the co-chair and colleague and friend from the South African non-governmental sector. Yesterday, we already elected the future co-chairs, and I would like to take the advantage here and wish them the success from Argentina, first of all, and the Minister of Modernization and Reforms of Argentina, Mr. Andres Ibarra, who is with us today, and I, as the co-chair of the OGP, I visited him and I saw the big effort made by the government of Argentina in order to reconcile the past with the future and to have very important reforms in nowadays. And also co-chair from the non-governmental sector, Robin Odest, the director of the B team. I would like to wish all the success, and I would like to end my the intervention with the words that was at the opening remarks. 100 years ago, the first independent Republic of Georgia existed. 100 years ago, Georgian women first voted in the election. 100 years ago, in Europe, we had the first social democratic republic, and the women and men of this country did it. 100 years ago, in our legislative body, we already had the MPs, the female MPs, and I, as working in this field, the female minister, I would like to respond them and just remember one of them, Christine Sharashidze, the member of the parliament of Georgia. And in 1920, she visited the Georgian mountain place. Our guests know that Georgia has the sea, the Black Sea, very beautiful landscape, very beautiful valleys, but it is widely known with its high mountain regions. And in that place, in a high mountain, in 1920, Christina Sharashidze, the member of the parliament, went there for the business trip. It was in Tianeti, the district. She saw very bad roads. She saw absolutely the unbearable services. They didn't exist at all. She also saw that as the local government was very distanced from the population and tried to tackle the very serious problems. And when she came back to the capital city, she made the report before the Parliament of Georgia and said what just a few minutes ago in 2018 from this the grandstanding Mr. Sanjay Pradhan mentioned. She said 100 years ago, Christina Sharashidze, that she saw in the mountain of Georgia, it's a quote, the governance is separately and the people are standing separately. At that very time, this major fundamental, the principle of the OGP became the topic in Georgia, the topic that was as the objective to be solved for the then government of Georgia. Today, the mayor, municipalities, Sacrebulo, the local council, they do their best in order not to have separately the government and separately the people. Today, we can say that our municipalities are closely involved in the OGP and they do their best in order not to have people separately and the governance separately. I would like to wish that through the reforms in Georgia, we continue the development of the spirit of the OGP. Thank you very much to the guests. I wish you very pleasant summit and from the second part of the day, good conditions for working. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed, Minister, for those closing words and for your welcome here today. Just a few announcements, what's going to happen next. We have shuttles which are going to take you to the funicular. Taxis and funicular also options for transportation. The lunch will be served at the funicular and sessions starting at 2 p.m. So please be there on time. If you could also leave your headsets, and perhaps a big round of applause to finish the morning for the interpreters who've done a fantastic job interpreting all these important messages into all the languages. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.